The word Na'ar, it's the word that's in the original text, the Hebrew text, and it has a lot of different meanings, but the meaning that it begins with in the Bible is young man or young men. And then for the first time it's used differently at Genesis 21 and 22 for lad. But when we look at Genesis 14 and we look at Genesis 18 and Genesis 19, it's interchangeable. It's ambiguous to age. It means young men. It doesn't mean old men or elder, but again, those are terms that would be equally ambiguous to age. When it gets to Genesis 22:5 and the story of the sacrifice of Isaac, you can see where they could have they used the lad within the same sentence that they used young men. It could have been used for young men and young man within that same sentence of Genesis 22:5. Na'ar is used, I believe, 70 plus times as young men or young man. It gives the reader the impression when they read the word lad, they tend to attach an age to it, and that may be a mistake. And the reason that I say this, and this, I'm not the only person to say this or think this, so many articles have been written on this about the fact that the word Nahar is in the original text. And if you ask Jewish people, they'll tell you that he was in his 30s. And it's because of what happens in Genesis 23, the immediately following chapter, and that is that Sarah dies at the age of 127. And Isaac would be 37 years old. And like I said, in the Jewish faith, if you ask them, they'll tell you that the word Nahar that's in the original text, they believe that Isaac was in his 30s when he was taken up to Mount Moriah with Abraham. Now, one of the places that gives them credibility with the word Na'ar and thinking that Isaac could be in his 30s is Genesis 41:12, right here, where this very famous line, "And there was there with us a Na'ar, a young man, a Hebrew servant to the captain of the guard, and we told him, and he interpreted to us our dreams, to each man according to his dream he did interpret." And they're talking about Joseph. And we know that Joseph is in his 30s at that moment. He's easily 30 years old. And he's probably about 33 years old also, about 32, 31, somewhere in that ballpark. But so we know that Joseph is over 30, and they use that term with him. But it's not inconsistent. Like I said, it's young men, young men. We see this prior to that. Again, I just think the word lad gives people a different idea than what the original text says. And the original text says Na'ar, and people believe that he could easily be in his 30s. I personally think he bared his own wood up Mount Moriah, and that he was 33 years old.